Hi, I'm Dave Dinkle, and thanks for joining me for this video series of actual recent deals. This is an example of a $51,835.53 profit with borrowed money in the deal. That means the student had no money in the deal. The following is a real estate deal that was recently completed, as a matter of fact, yesterday, and by a student. The deal exemplifies some of the various aspects of how we do these transactions and overcomes some of the myths and stigmatism of the REO market. So as not to embarrass anyone involved in this transaction, all parties have been kept anonymous. I'm not an attorney, CPA, or realtor. Any information derived or found in this presentation is not to be construed as legal or accounting advice. So what does a $51,835 profit look like for an REO purchase and resale, same day, no money, no credit, and no risk whatsoever in the transaction? To summarize, this is an example of a purchase and sale of an 8-plex with a first leg A to B done by using private money financing. The seller A, the property owner, in this case a lender who had foreclosed on the asset, sells to buyer B, the investor, and happens to be our student, who sells to the end buyer C, who was an entity. No money in the deal. Student got money from a private lender. No credit because no conventional lender was involved. No risk because he had no money in the deal. And I think what's important is this deal was a result of total persistence on the part of the student who wouldn't take the standard no's from the listing agent. I'm going to do this in the student's own words. He sent me an email and he said very excitedly, here's what happened. So I'm going to do it in his words. Here's a short summary of the whole process from the property that we just closed. I found this REO property listed on the MLS. I researched the property on REIFax. Also, since it was a multifamily property, there wasn't a solid comparable value to figure out my offer on it. Now, what he should have done is use the divisor factor, but in this case, it didn't matter. He emailed a realtor expressing his interest in the property, who gave him a call back and asked to have a call back to know more about the listing. I emailed a realtor expressing my interest in the property and to give me a call back to know more about the listing. The property was listed at $159 as an REO. After speaking to the realtor about the property and knowing the total rental income on the property, he used the divisor factor. He originally offered $105,500. The realtor got back to me that he would present the offer as is to the seller. That's the realtor's job. That's what he's supposed to do. That's not what you'll hear in some cases. The seller countered back with $10,000 for escrow deposit and a purchase price of $127,000 with a 5-day inspection. I told them that we would stay at $105,500 and we could do a $1,000 deposit, which is what he offered in the first place, and $4,000 after a 7-day inspection. Absolutely what he should have done. The realtor said it wouldn't happen at that term. I'm going to repeat that. The realtor said it wouldn't happen at that term. Let's see what happened. I waited and followed up the next week, and the seller approved it. We sent it to DREA to advertise and got it our end buyer from you guys. I'm a partner in DREA. We advertised it on our email list, found a buyer. Next week we asked for a price reduction. Realtor said it would not happen again. The seller would not accept it. I'm repeating. The realtor said for the third time it will not happen. The seller will not accept it. I told them I would need to have it or else we couldn't proceed. The seller approved an $8,500 discount on it. Now, listen to this next sentence. It's very important. On the day of closing, I asked for an extension until Friday, as we needed some time to arrange for everything for our end buyer and the property to be properly boarded up. A day before closing, I spoke with the realtor in regards to extending our closing, as our end buyer would like to conduct a survey on the property to make sure that everything had been done properly. He disclosed to the realtor that we have an end buyer, and the end buyer wanted a survey. Now you might think, well, that's the death knolls for the property. It didn't matter. The seller's attorney was going to provide an official document from the city proving that the property was up to code, and because of that they would not provide an extension for the closing. That was 5 days before they granted the extension and we actually closed. At the last moment, Dave helped us complete the closing and make it happen. It was an excellent experience and a great opportunity to put into action all that we have learned from Dave and his program, and to be able to be persistent to overcome all the excuses, objections, and become fearless. So now we're going to look at the HUD-1 closing statement, A to B, page 1. For you critics who say it can't be done, here's the HUD statement. Again, I've made it anonymous so as not to hurt the feelings of the agent, REO asset manager, or anyone else involved in it. There's the purchase price, $97,000. Remember, it was listed at $159,900, reduced to $105,000, and then a credit. In this case, it was a price reduction credit versus a repair credit. Seller received $97,000 gross, less what it cost for the closing. Student paid $1,700 in closing cost, and the seller gave us a partial credit for county taxes for a segment of the year that they didn't close and we originally contracted, none of which matters. We got a credit for it. Now, here's something that you guys can't grasp or get your head around. Do you see the student deposit here? No, you don't see it because there is none. Remember above, he negotiated a deposit. Do you see a deposit? No. Do you need a deposit? Depends on who you're using. Next thing up here is the cost to the seller to close. And they're $16,543.87. You're going to see why in a minute. Bottom line, student had to bring in $99,547.43. They brought in nothing. Private money lender put up the whole amount. You'll see that on the B to C HUD. The seller received $80,000, whatever, $867.81. Here's page 2, A to B, closing of the HUD, page 2. I'm going to go through these very quickly because these really don't matter a lot. In most cases, they're just fees and expenses. Here's the HUD-1 closing statement, A to B, page 2. And as you note, the seller A paid a $5,800 commission, it looks like, to the listing agent as the REO broker in this particular situation. Again, these fees and expenses are normal and customary in our area. These are the settlement fee and the abstracted title search paid by the buyer. Look at this, $1,750 paid by the seller for his attorney to overlook the deal. The buyer paid for title insurance. Why did we do that? Because we wanted to pick the closing agent. We agreed to pay for it, therefore we used our own closing agent. Critical in controlling the deal. These are wire fees for the seller, and same thing for the buyer. These are other expenses that are listing fee, recording, electronic recording fees, and so on. Incidental. These are the fees that the seller had to pay for doc stamps for the transfer of the property and so on. Lien search we paid for. However, here's the big number. These are outstanding issues with the property. Past tax for 2012. They paid for 2013 also. Utility lien. Bottom line on the whole thing was this. We, the student, paid $1,720 some odd dollars for closing cost. Lender paid $16,543. So let's go on to the HUD closing statement for the B to C. Let's see where the money is. Purchase price, $154,000. End buyer C paid it. Student received it, less closing cost expenses. Settlement charges to the end buyer are $3,000 and change. We gave the end buyer a partial credit, less than what we received from the original seller for that time period that we were in that negotiation phase, and it didn't count at year-end taxes, so on and so forth. Now, this is important. Here's the end buyer C. That's his deposit. If you can't see it, it's $5,000. Always have the end buyer put up more money than you put up. In our case, our deposit was how much? If you remember, it was in yellow, 0. If you're saying to yourself, it can't be done, you saw the HUD statements. Why don't you start believing and start doing deals instead of finding excuses why you can't? Okay, here's the closing cost for the student for the sale on the B to C side, $3,000 and change. Okay, the end buyer got a $100,000 loan to purchase the property. That's the loan right there. This is the return to the private lender. Remember, this is the sale, so the student has to pay the private money lender back who put the money up for the transaction. This is an A to B and B to C, same day. Bingo, there's the bottom line. Student's profit, $51,835.53. End buyer had to bring in I can't read the number, $53,000 and change to closing. to close. So let's look at the expenses on the B2C side, which were on the front side of the HUD before. This is a document prep fee. The end buyer had an attorney involved. He charged them fees. There's also a wire fund charge here, as you can see. Now, this is interest that the end buyer is paying to his private lender. Could be points. I'm not sure what it is. This is the settlement or closing fee to the end buyer, which is $450. Same amount to us. We had the end buyer pay for title insurance. We chose the closing agent. In the A to B side, I showed you that we paid for the title insurance because we chose the closing agent. In this case, we had the end buyer pay for it, but we chose the closing agent. On REO contracts, I see about 1 in 100 where that happens. The REO asset manager is sophisticated enough that he knows it's usual and customary for whoever pays for title to be able to pick the closing agent. But some of these guys are very smart, somewhat like our students, and they say, here's the deal. You're paying for title and we're picking the closing agent. Is that illegal? No. It's whatever's usual and customary in your state or county, and that's usual and customary in our state, but it's usual and customary. It's not a requirement of the law. These are wire fees and so on, just incidental exchanges of money for whatever was needed as a cost or a small profit margin. And these are doc stamps and transfer taxes and various things like that. Now, these numbers, if you look back if you want to, it doesn't matter, were paid on the A to B HUD. Why did we put them on the B to C HUD statement? Because the end buyer C wanted to see that they were paid. Now, we didn't want to show them the A to B closing docs because there's a $50,000 profit in it. And the worst thing you can do is have your end buyer say, oh my gosh, if you got it that cheap, maybe I can get it that cheap. I'm not closing. He's only risking a $5,000 deposit. So what we did is we put them on the HUD, essentially where you would put a paid outside of closing or POC item. The bottom line is the student had about $3,300 in charges, and there you see a funding fee of $991. That happens to go to the private money lender that funded his deal. He has a debit on the front side of the HUD statement, taking away from his profit margin the cost of his expenses to close, which are about $3,300, and the end buyer has about $3,900 in cost. So let's look at the final result of this transaction. First of all, and most importantly, I think, is the property was gotten off the MLS as an REO, a listed REO property. Private money lender funded the A to B leg of the transaction, and the B to C leg was known to the asset manager of the REO. Property had code violations that required being fixed. That was before the A to B original sale, which the asset manager's attorney fixed as best he could by boarding up the properties. The end buyer assumed those liabilities once he purchased it. All of that was fully disclosed to him. I'm going to say to you right now before I go on, this guy paid $150,000 for the property. It's 8 units. What are they really worth? Well, in reality, when he puts about $5,000 to $6,000 in each unit, he's going to sell them in the $250 to $300 range to an out-of-country buyer who wants an 8% cap rate, and he's very satisfied with it. So this end buyer C should walk away with a chunk of change after he does the work on it, all of which is easy, especially when you're going to go through the code compliance issues and get them done. The end buyer used private financing to fund the B2C leg. The student's net profit for this no money out of pocket, no money, no credit, no risk was $51,835.53, and no repairs. So if you're rehabbing and you're buying properties in the 75s, 80s, you're selling them in the 135, 50 area, and you're making $40,000 a deal and waiting 6 months or thereabouts to get the money, this is a no money deal, no waiting time. This deal goes to show that all REOs do not always trade at or above the listing price. REOs can be negotiated, and there's a gigantic opportunity for properties that have code violations and lien issues to make money. What's happening, interestingly enough, is we have professional buyers who are building portfolios who will not touch properties with lien issues. They'll pay much more money for them. Rather than curing the problems themselves, they'll pay an extra $50,000 or $100,000 for the same property they wouldn't touch because they don't go to the marginally extra effort to find out what the code and lien issues are and how much it would cost to fix them. So ask yourself this simple question. Why not me? There's no reason in the world. I put this video together very quickly, so bear with me, but I'm going to mention to you also that the mentoring program, the last one for this year, is November 23rd and 24th. That's 2013. If you've been thinking about the mentoring program, now's the time to do it, because in 2014 we are doubling the price to $10,000. Why? Here's an example of what you can learn and do on your own. How many deals do you need to do $5,000, the current mentoring price? Well, on a bad day, you need one normal deal. On a good day, here's 10 times the amount. Money into the deal, risk into the deal, rehabbing into the deal was nada. Nothing, guys. So I want to reiterate once more. Our last mentoring class of the year and last mentoring class at $5,000 is going to be Saturday, November 23rd and Sunday, November 24th of this year for the quick start portion. Go to drea.org/drea-mentoring-program for additional information, or call 305-758-3133 and ask for Dave. Thanks very much and have a great day.